The evening had started like any other at the Grand Palm Hotel. The soft glow of crystal chandeliers cast warm light across the marble floors of the lobby, where guests in expensive clothes chatted over cocktails. In one corner, a sleek black piano stood on a small raised platform, and that's where Michael Chen had spent most evenings for the past 3 years. Michael's fingers moved across the keys with practiced ease as he played a gentle classical piece that floated through the air, barely noticed by the hotel guests. He didn't mind being background noise, most nights anyway. Tonight, a small sigh escaped him as he transitioned into another piece from memory. "You look bored out of your mind," whispered Diane, a waitress balancing a tray of empty champagne flutes as she passed by his piano. Michael gave a small smile but kept playing without missing a note. "Just thinking about how this isn't exactly what I pictured when I was at Juilliard. Still better than dealing with Mr. Thompson over there." Diane nodded toward a red-faced businessman demanding another drink. "He's already sent back 3 perfectly good martinis." They shared a knowing look before Diane hurried off to the bar. Michael allowed his mind to wander as his hands continued their familiar dance across the keys. His tiny apartment was filled with compositions he'd written, but never played for an audience. Real music, not this pleasant but forgettable soundtrack for wealthy people who didn't listen. The hotel's front doors swung open, bringing in a gust of cool evening air and the unmistakable energy that comes with new arrivals. Michael glanced up briefly, then did a double take, his fingers stumbling slightly on the keys before recovering. Victoria Blackwood had just walked in. Even if her face hadn't been splashed across business magazines and tech blogs, her presence would have been impossible to ignore. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in her adult life. Behind her trailed 3 people clutching tablets and phones, hanging on her every word as she spoke without bothering to look at them. "I don't care what the market projections say," she was saying, her voice carrying across the lobby. "If we delay the launch because of a few nervous board members, our competitors will beat us to it. Schedule the announcement for next Tuesday." Michael tried not to stare as he continued playing. Victoria Blackwood was not just wealthy. She was the founder and CEO of Blackwood Technologies, the fastest-growing tech company of the decade. At just 32, she was worth billions and known for her brilliant mind, cutting-edge innovations, and impossibly high standards. She was also known for being difficult. Stories about her firing employees on the spot for minor mistakes circulated widely. Some called her visionary, others called her ruthless. Everyone agreed she was a force to be reckoned with. The hotel manager rushed forward, greeting Victoria with a nervous smile. "Ms. Blackwood, welcome back to the Grand Palm. Your usual suite is ready, and we've arranged everything according to your preferences." She barely acknowledged him with a nod before turning to a tall man in a sleek suit who appeared to be her personal assistant. "Tell the restaurant I'll be dining at 8 and I want that corner table by the window. Not the one they gave me last time, it had a draft." "Yes, of course," the assistant replied, already typing on his phone. Victoria's group settled into the lounge area not far from the piano. Michael kept his head down, focusing on the music, but he couldn't help overhearing snippets of their conversation as they discussed business strategies and investment opportunities. "This pianist is better than the one they had last time," Victoria remarked suddenly, her voice casual but clear enough for Michael to hear. "Still not particularly interesting, though. Always the same predictable classical pieces in these hotels." Michael's hands faltered slightly before he steadied himself. He shouldn't care what some rich tech CEO thought about hotel lobby music, but something about being dismissed so easily made his skin prickle with annoyance. "Speaking of boring and predictable," Victoria continued to her group, apparently moving on to a new topic. "That dinner with the venture capitalist last night was excruciating. He spent the entire time trying to impress me with his yacht collection and dropping names of celebrities he claims to." "No, he's been calling the office every hour today," her assistant mentioned. Victoria sighed dramatically. "I'm so tired of people who think money is a personality. And I'm even more tired of dating. Everyone either wants something from me or is intimidated to the point of being unbearably dull." Michael couldn't see her face from his angle, but he could hear the genuine frustration in her voice. Despite her reputation and wealth, there was something almost relatable in that moment. The sound of someone who had everything and yet was still dissatisfied. "Maybe you need to meet someone outside your usual circles," suggested a woman from her entourage. And where would I find such a person? Victoria asked with a laugh. I work 18-hour days, and when I'm not working, I'm at events surrounded by the same types of people. It's all very predictable, offered her assistant with a small smile. Exactly, Victoria agreed. Michael, still playing softly, had shifted to one of his own compositions without realizing it. It was something he often did when distracted, slip into playing the music that lived in his head rather than the approved hotel playlist. James, a bartender who had been serving drinks to a nearby table, passed close to the piano and paused. That's new, he whispered. One of yours? Michael nodded slightly, about to switch back to the standard repertoire when James glanced over at Victoria's group, then back at Michael with a mischievous gleam in his eye. Hey, Michael here could change your mind about boring, predictable things, James called out suddenly, loud enough for Victoria's group to hear. The lobby seemed to freeze. Victoria turned in her seat, raising an eyebrow as she looked directly at the piano for what seemed like the first time. James, Michael hissed under his breath, his face flushing with embarrassment and alarm, but it was too late. Victoria was already rising from her chair, her interest apparently piqued by this unexpected interruption. She walked toward the piano, her heels clicking authoritatively on the marble floor. The hotel manager looked horrified, clearly preparing for damage control. I'm so sorry, Ms. Blackwood, the manager began. Please ignore. Victoria raised a hand, silencing him without even looking in his direction. Her eyes were fixed on Michael, who somehow kept playing despite the chaos erupting inside him. And how exactly would you change my mind? She asked, her tone somewhere between amusement and challenge. Before Michael could answer, James jumped in again. He's actually a brilliant composer. Graduated from Juilliard. This place is lucky to have him. Victoria tilted her head slightly, studying Michael with new interest. Is that so? Michael finally stopped playing, the silence suddenly deafening. He should say something professional and apologize for his colleague's outburst. That would be the sensible thing to do. Instead, he found himself meeting her gaze steadily. Music can surprise you, he said simply, even in predictable places. A small smile played at the corner of Victoria's mouth. The lobby had gone completely silent. Hotel guests were watching the scene unfold with undisguised curiosity. The staff had frozen in place, glasses and trays suspended mid-task. Then Victoria did something that shocked everyone present. She leaned against the piano, her designer dress catching the light, and issued what sounded remarkably like a dare. Play that piano, she said, her voice carrying across the silent lobby, and I'll go out with you. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Victoria's assistant stepped forward as if to intervene, but she waved him back without breaking eye contact with Michael. Michael stared at her, trying to determine if she was serious or just amusing herself at his expense. Either way, he suddenly realized he had nothing to lose. This woman who had everything, who was bored by everything, who expected nothing from a hotel pianist, she had just issued a challenge he couldn't ignore. His hands returned to the keys, hovering for just a moment. Then, instead of resuming his previous piece or falling back on a familiar classic, Michael closed his eyes and began to play, something entirely different. It was a composition he had written during his final year at Juilliard, one that had earned him recognition from his professors, but that he had never performed publicly since. It began softly, almost tentatively, like a question being asked. Then it built, layer upon layer, into something that seemed to tell a story of ambition and doubt, of striving and falling and getting back up again. The notes filled the lobby, bouncing off marble and crystal to create a sound that was bigger than the space should have allowed. Michael poured everything into it. His frustration with playing background music, his abandoned dreams, the strange electricity of this moment with everyone watching. When he finally opened his eyes, Victoria was still leaning against the piano, but her expression had changed. The amused smile was gone, replaced by something more complex, almost vulnerable. For a brief moment, she looked younger, less guarded. The final notes hung in the air as Michael finished. The silence that followed lasted several heartbeats before someone in the back of the lobby began to applaud. Others joined in until the sound swelled around them. Victoria straightened up, composing her features back into their usual confident arrangement. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, placing it on top of the piano. Tomorrow night, she said, her voice lower than before, meant just for him. 7 o'clock. My driver will collect you from the staff entrance." Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked back to her group, who scrambled to gather their things and follow her toward the elevators. Just before she disappeared from view, she glanced back over her shoulder and caught his eye one more time. The staff erupted into excited whispers as soon as she was gone. Diane rushed over to the piano, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Did that really just happen?" she demanded. "Did Victoria Blackwood just ask you out because you played the piano?" Michael stared down at the elegant business card on his piano, embossed with just a name and a phone number. No title, no company logo, as if everyone should already know who she was. "I think she did," he said, still not quite believing it himself. James slapped him on the back. "You're welcome." He grinned, looking entirely too pleased with himself. The hotel manager approached, his expression a mix of worry and amazement. "Chen, I don't know if this is brilliant or if we're all about to be fired," he said, shaking his head. But that was some playing. Michael picked up the business card, turning it over in his fingers. Tomorrow at 7, his life would change, he just didn't know how yet. All because he had played not what was expected, but what was real. Michael spent the next day in a daze. He showed up for his morning shift at the hotel cafe where he sometimes filled in as a waiter, but he kept mixing up orders and spilling things. His mind was elsewhere, specifically on the business card tucked carefully in his wallet and the clock that seemed to be moving both too quickly and too slowly toward 7 o'clock. "Earth to Michael," said Diane, snapping her fingers in front of his face as they restocked napkins during a quiet moment. "You've been a million miles away all day." "Sorry," he said, shaking his head. "I just can't believe what happened last night." "None of us can," Diane laughed. "The whole staff is talking about it. Victoria Blackwood asking out a hotel pianist. It's like something from a movie." Michael frowned slightly. "When you put it that way, it sounds ridiculous." "I didn't mean it like that," Diane backtracked. "It's just unexpected. And exciting, but—" She hesitated, biting her lip. "But what?" Michael prompted. Diane leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Look, my cousin worked as a temp at Blackwood Technologies last year." The stories she told. Victoria goes through people like tissues. Assistants, business partners, romantic interests. They're all just temporary to her. She gets bored easily. "Maybe those people were boring," Michael said, surprising himself with the defensive tone in his voice. "Maybe," Diane agreed with a small shrug. "Just be careful, okay? People like her live in a completely different world." Throughout the day, more colleagues approached Michael with similar warnings mixed with excited questions. James, whose outburst had started this whole thing, seemed to think he deserved credit for potentially launching Michael's love life and career simultaneously. "When you're living in her penthouse and playing sold-out concerts, remember who made it happen," James joked during their lunch break. The hotel manager pulled Michael aside before his shift ended. "Chen, whatever happens tonight, remember you represent the Grand Palm Hotel. Ms. Blackwood is one of our most valued guests." "Are you telling me not to embarrass the hotel or not to upset her?" Michael asked. The manager adjusted his tie nervously. "Both, ideally, just be professional." By the time 6 o'clock rolled around, Michael had heard so many warnings and jokes that his initial excitement had transformed into anxiety. He changed out of his uniform in the staff locker room, putting on the nicest clothes he had brought, dark jeans and a button-down shirt that he hoped looked casual but appropriate. "You should wear a tie," offered Pavel, a bellhop who had somehow heard about the date despite not even working the previous night. "He should cancel and save himself the trouble," countered Will from maintenance, who was changing out of his coveralls. "Those rich types just want to show off something new and interesting to their friends." "No offense, Michael." Michael ignored them both, checking his reflection one last time in the small mirror inside his locker. His dark hair, usually neatly combed for work, looked stiff and unnatural after he had fussed with it too much. He ran his fingers through it to make it look more natural, then immediately regretted it and tried to fix it again. "Stop," he told himself quietly. "It doesn't matter." But it did matter, and that realization bothered him. Why should he care what Victoria Blackwood thought about his appearance? The whole situation was absurd. She had issued what amounted to a public dare, and he had accepted it. This wasn't a real date. It was probably just entertainment for her, a break from the boredom she had complained about. Michael considered not showing up at all. He could pick up an extra shift playing piano in the lobby. He could go home and work on the composition he'd been struggling with for months. He could do anything other than step outside and get into a car with a billionaire who would probably lose interest in him before the evening was over. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Car waiting at staff entrance. But just like that, the decision was made for him. His feet carried him through the back hallways of the hotel and out the staff door where a sleek black car idled by the curb. The driver, a woman in a neat dark suit, opened the back door as he approached. "Mr. Chen?" she asked. Michael nodded, suddenly unable to form words. He slid into the back seat, half expecting to find Victoria waiting for him, but the car was empty. The interior smelled of leather and something subtly expensive, like a perfume that cost more than his monthly rent. "Ms. Blackwood will meet you at the destination," the driver explained, catching his confused look in the rearview mirror as she pulled away from the curb. "It's about a 20-minute drive. Where are we going?" Michael asked, finding his voice. "Ms. Blackwood asked me not to say." The driver replied with a small smile. She mentioned something about avoiding preconceptions. Michael looked out the window as they drove through the city, trying to calm his nerves. The familiar streets eventually gave way to areas he rarely visited, exclusive shopping districts with designer boutiques, then tree-lined avenues with imposing homes set back from the road. To his surprise, the car then turned into a neighborhood that grew increasingly modest. Small businesses with colorful storefronts appeared, along with apartment buildings that had seen better days. They finally stopped in front of a plain brick building with a simple sign, Westside Community Music Center. The driver opened his door. "Ms. Blackwood is inside. Just go through the main entrance." Confused but curious, Michael walked up to the building. Through the glass doors, he could see a lobby with worn but clean furniture and walls covered with children's artwork. A bulletin board displayed flyers for music lessons and community concerts. He pushed through the doors and followed the sound of a piano, not played well, but with enthusiasm. The notes were halting and sometimes incorrect, accompanied by a child's laughter and an adult's encouraging voice. Michael followed the sounds down a hallway to a room where a small, upright piano stood against one wall. Seated at it was a young girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, her legs dangling from the bench, feet nowhere near the pedals. And next to her, pointing at the sheet music and gently correcting her hand position, was Victoria Blackwood. Gone was the designer dress from the night before, replaced by simple dark pants and a soft sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail rather than the sleek style she'd worn at the hotel. If he hadn't been expecting to find her, Michael might not have recognized her immediately. "That's better," Victoria was saying to the girl. "Remember to keep your wrists up like you're holding a small ball in each hand." The girl tried again, her small face scrunched in concentration as she played a simple melody. "Perfect," Victoria exclaimed when she finished. "You've definitely been practicing. 5 more minutes, then we're done for today, okay?" It was only then that she looked up and noticed Michael standing in the doorway. Her expression shifted subtly, a flicker of something like embarrassment before her confident smile returned. "Michael," she said. "Right on time. This is Lily. She's been taking lessons for about 3 months now." "Almost 4 months," Lily corrected proudly. "Almost 4, Victoria agreed, "and improving every week." "Lily, this is Michael. He's a real pianist, much better than me." Lily regarded Michael with wide-eyed interest. "Can you play something? Ms. Victoria says watching good players helps us learn faster." Put on the spot, Michael moved into the room and sat at a second, larger piano in the corner that he hadn't noticed at first. "Any requests?" he asked, something happy. Lily decided after a moment of serious thought. Michael smiled and began playing, a lively piece he often used during the brunch service at the hotel, light and cheerful but with enough complexity to be interesting. Lily watched his hands with fascination. When he finished, Lily applauded enthusiastically. "Your fingers move so fast. Will mine do that someday?" "Absolutely," Michael assured her. "If you keep practicing." A woman appeared in the doorway, presumably Lily's mother based on their similar features. "Sorry I'm late," she said, slightly out of breath. "The bus was delayed again." "No problem at all," Victoria said. "Lily was just getting some inspiration from our guest teacher today." After Lily gathered her things and left with her mother, Michael turned to Victoria with undisguised curiosity. "Guest teacher?" he asked. Victoria shrugged, suddenly looking less self-assured than he had ever seen her. I help out here twice a week. It's not something I advertise, why not? Michael asked. It's unexpected. Exactly, Victoria said, her usual confidence returning. Can you imagine the headlines? Tech tyrant teaches tiny tots? The board would have concerns about my focus. Competitors would look for angles to exploit, and these kids would be harassed by reporters. No, this stays private. She began gathering sheet music from the piano, organizing it with efficient movements. I've been coming here for 5 years. It's the only place where nobody expects anything from me except to show up and help with basic scales and theory. Michael watched her, trying to reconcile the woman before him with the intimidating CEO from the hotel lobby. How did you get started with this? Victoria's expression softened slightly. I grew up in a neighborhood like this one. My mother worked 2 jobs, but she somehow found money for piano lessons because I begged for them. Music was an escape. Later, when I sold my first company, I looked for this place specifically to donate to. Then donating turned into volunteering. She glanced at him as if assessing his reaction. Surprised? Yes, Michael admitted honestly. But in a good way. Good, Victoria said, checking her watch. Now I believe I promised you a date. Are you hungry? There's an amazing little place around the corner. Nothing fancy, but their food is incredible. The little place turned out to be a family-owned Vietnamese restaurant with just 8 tables. The owner greeted Victoria by name and led them to a corner table without needing to be asked. No reservation, no special treatment beyond the warm welcome given to a regular customer. I come here after my sessions at the music center, Victoria explained as they settled in. Their pho is better than what they serve at any 5-star restaurant in the city. As they ordered and began to eat, Michael found himself relaxing. The conversation flowed more easily than he had expected. Victoria asked about his music, listening intently as he described his composition process and the pieces he was working on. He asked about her company, genuinely interested in how she had built it from the ground up. You're different than I expected, Michael said finally. As they shared a dessert the owner had insisted they try. So are you, Victoria replied. Most people either try too hard to impress me or they're too intimidated to be themselves. You're just honest. Maybe because I have nothing to gain and nothing to lose, Michael suggested. Victoria studied him for a moment, then smiled. A real smile, not the polished one she had worn at the hotel. That might be the most refreshing thing anyone has said to me in years. As they left the restaurant, walking back toward where the car waited, Victoria stopped suddenly. I have a confession to make, she said. I never actually expected to go through with this date. What changed your mind? Michael asked. Victoria looked at him directly, her eyes serious in the glow of the streetlights. You're playing. It wasn't just technically good, it was honest. I could feel that you meant every note. She took a step closer to him. People in my world rarely mean what they say or say what they mean. But music doesn't lie. When you played, I heard something real for the first time in a long while. For a moment, they stood there in comfortable silence, the busy street around them seeming to fade into the background. Then Victoria's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. She checked it with a sigh. Work emergency? Michael guessed. Always, she confirmed. The driver will take you home. As they walked the last block to the car, Victoria asked casually, Do you work tomorrow night? Yes, Michael said. Regular shift at the piano, 6 to 10. Good, Victoria nodded. Maybe I'll stop by. If you're lucky, I might even request a song. The driver opened the car door and before getting in, Victoria surprised Michael by leaning in and kissing him lightly on the cheek. Thank you for an unexpectedly wonderful evening, Michael Chen, she said quietly. As the car pulled away, Michael stood on the sidewalk, touching his cheek where her lips had been. His colleagues had been right about one thing. Victoria Blackwood did indeed live in a different world. But for a few hours tonight she had invited him into it, and nothing had been what he expected. The next morning, Michael arrived at work to find the hotel buzzing with curiosity. Word had spread quickly about his date with Victoria Blackwood, and it seemed everyone had questions. Diane cornered him in the break room before he could even get his coffee. Well, she demanded, practically bouncing with excitement. How was it? Where did she take you? Some fancy restaurant? Her penthouse? Michael hesitated. He felt strangely protective of the evening he'd shared with Victoria. The community music center, the small Vietnamese restaurant, their surprisingly easy conversation. Those moments seemed private, almost delicate. If he shared them, they might be twisted into hotel gossip or worse, not believed at all. It was nice, he said simply. Different than I expected. Different how? Diane pressed. Michael was saved from answering by James, who burst into the break room with his phone in hand. Have you seen this? He asked, thrusting the device toward Michael. On the screen was a gossip website with the headline, Tech Billionaire's Latest Fling, Hotel Musician. Below it was a blurry photo of Michael and Victoria standing outside the Vietnamese restaurant, her hand on his arm as she laughed at something he'd said. How did they? Michael began, his stomach dropping. Someone must have recognized her and tipped them off, James said, sounding more excited than concerned. You're famous now, buddy. Michael took the phone and scrolled through the short article. It was mostly speculation and innuendo, suggesting Victoria had a pattern of brief infatuations with artists and musicians. The final paragraph mentioned the Grand Palm Hotel by name, noting that Michael was currently employed as the lobby pianist. This is not good, Michael muttered, handing the phone back. Are you kidding? This is great, James exclaimed. Do you know how many views my Instagram would get if I posted that I know you? Don't, Michael said sharply. Please don't post anything. The hotel manager appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Chen, my office now. As Michael followed him, he felt a cold weight settling in his chest. He wasn't naive. He had known there could be consequences to accepting Victoria's challenge. But he hadn't expected them to come so quickly or so publicly. In his office, the manager closed the door and took a seat behind his desk. I've received 3 calls this morning from news outlets asking about you, he said without preamble. The hotel owner has also called, concerned about the publicity. I'm sorry, Michael said. I had no idea anyone was taking pictures. The manager sighed. The good news is Ms. Blackwood's team has already contacted us. They're handling the situation and have asked the websites to remove the photos as an invasion of privacy. Michael felt a flash of relief, quickly followed by surprise. Victoria was protecting him, or at least controlling the narrative. The hotel's position, the manager continued, is that we neither confirm nor deny the personal lives of our staff or guests. You're instructed to say no comment if approached by anyone asking questions. Of course, Michael agreed quickly. And Chen, the manager added, his tone softening slightly. Be careful. Ms. Blackwood lives in the public eye. You don't. This could get complicated. Throughout his shift at the cafe, Michael felt eyes on him. Guests who had read the article or seen the photo online watched him curiously as he served their coffee. Colleagues who normally barely noticed him suddenly found reasons to chat. By the time evening came and he took his place at the piano in the lobby, he felt drained from the constant attention. His phone had been buzzing with notifications all day, friend requests from strangers, messages from old classmates he hadn't spoken to in years, and even a few inquiries from local journalists. He had silenced it and shoved it deep in his pocket, focusing instead on the familiar comfort of the piano keys. As he played, Michael found himself watching the hotel entrance, wondering if Victoria would really come back as she had suggested. Part of him hoped she wouldn't. The day had been chaotic enough without adding another public scene. But another part, a part he was reluctant to acknowledge, was waiting eagerly for her return. At 8:30, just as he was beginning to think she wouldn't show, Victoria walked through the doors. She wasn't with her usual entourage this time, just her personal assistant who peeled off to speak with the front desk staff, while Victoria made her way directly to the piano. She looked different tonight, still elegant, but more subdued in a simple black dress and minimal jewelry. Her expression was carefully neutral as she approached, but Michael noticed the tightness around her eyes. May I? She asked, gesturing to the empty space on the bench beside him. Michael nodded, shifting over to make room. Victoria sat down, her shoulder just barely touching his as he continued to play. I apologize for the unwanted attention, she said quietly, her voice just audible over the music. My PR team is dealing with it. The photo should be removed from most sites by morning. Thank you, Michael said, his fingers still moving across the keys. It's been a strange day. Victoria watched his hands for a moment, This must be new for you, people suddenly interested in your personal life, making assumptions, wanting something from you. Very new, Michael agreed. Is it always like this for you? Since I was 25, Victoria confirmed. You get used to it. You learn who you can trust. There was a hint of resignation in her voice that made Michael glance at her. Despite her composed appearance, she looked tired. Bad day? He asked. A small surprised smile touched her lips. Terrible, actually. Board meeting ran long. Stock dropped 2% on a false rumor. And now this. Attention. Do you regret our date? Michael asked, the question out before he could stop it. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her gaze still on his hands as they moved across the keys. No, she said finally. It was the only good part of my week. Something warm unfurled in Michael's chest at her words. He shifted the piece he was playing, transitioning smoothly into one of his own compositions. Something new that he'd been working on that morning. Inspired by their evening together. Victoria noticed the change immediately. Is this one of yours? She asked. Michael nodded, suddenly self-conscious. It's beautiful, she said softly. Hopeful. They sat in companionable silence as he played, the lobby bustling around them. Michael was acutely aware of the curious glances from guests and staff, but for these few minutes the only person who mattered was sitting beside him. When he finished the piece, Victoria stood up. Walk with me, she said. Not quite a question, but not quite a command either. Michael nodded to the assistant manager who was hovering nearby, silently asking permission to take a break. The man hesitated, then gave a reluctant nod. Victoria led the way through the lobby and out onto the hotel's terrace, a quiet space with a view of the city lights. A few guests lingered at tables enjoying the mild evening, but Victoria found an unoccupied corner where they could speak privately. I have a proposition for you, she said, once they were alone. Michael raised an eyebrow, waiting. I'm hosting a charity gala next week, Victoria explained. It raises money for arts education in underfunded schools, programs like the one at the music center. That sounds worthwhile, Michael said carefully, not sure where this was going. The entertainment canceled yesterday, some scheduling conflict, Victoria continued. I'd like you to perform instead. Your original compositions, a proper audience, not hotel guests who aren't really listening. Michael stared at her, momentarily speechless. You want me to play at your gala? In front of your colleagues and friends? Yes, Victoria said simply. You're talented, Michael. You should be heard by people who appreciate that. The offer was unexpected and exciting, but something about it made Michael hesitate. Is this because of our date? Because if so, it's because you're good, Victoria interrupted. The date is separate. Michael studied her face, trying to read her true intentions. And what about the date? Is there going to be another one? A hint of vulnerability crossed Victoria's features before her composure returned. Do you want there to be? Yes, Michael said honestly. But I'm not sure it's a good idea. Our worlds are very different. They don't have to be, Victoria said. At least not completely. Last night proved that, I think. Before Michael could respond, Victoria's assistant appeared at the terrace entrance, pointedly checking his watch. Victoria sighed. I have a conference call in 10 minutes that I can't miss, she explained. Think about the gala. It's next Saturday at the Westbrook Hotel. You'd be compensated, of course. I'll think about it, Michael promised. Victoria took a step closer. And think about this too, she said softly, leaning in to kiss him. Not on the cheek this time, but briefly and gently on the lips. She pulled back, her expression giving away nothing as she turned to leave. I'll have my assistant send you the details for the gala. Let me know by Friday. Michael watched her go, his thoughts in turmoil. The kiss had been quick but unmistakable. So was the message. She was interested in him despite the complications, despite their different worlds. As he walked back to the piano, Michael noticed Diane and James watching him with undisguised curiosity from the bar. The hotel manager was in the lobby too, his expression concerned as he took in Michael's slightly dazed appearance. Everything okay? The manager asked as Michael resumed his seat at the piano. I'm not sure, Michael answered honestly. I've been invited to perform at a charity gala next week. Victoria Blackwood's gala? The manager asked, surprising Michael with his knowledge. It's a prestigious event. Many of our regular guests attend. Would the hotel have a problem with me performing there? Michael asked. The manager considered this. Officially, no. It might even be good publicity for us, unofficially. He hesitated. Be careful about mixing business and pleasure. Chen, especially with someone like Ms. Blackwood. Michael nodded, though his mind was already elsewhere, on the feel of Victoria's lips against his, on the opportunity to play his music for a real audience, and on the strange new path his life seemed to be taking. As he began to play again, Michael realized his hands had automatically found the melody of the new composition, the hopeful one as Victoria had called it. It felt right somehow, like the musical embodiment of possibility. Around him the hotel continued its evening rhythm. But for once, Michael didn't feel like background music. For better or worse, he had stepped into the spotlight. Now he just had to decide what to do there. The week leading up to the charity gala passed in a blur for Michael. By Tuesday, he had accepted Victoria's invitation to perform, and her assistant had immediately sent over a detailed schedule, along with an offer of payment that made Michael do a double-take. It was more than he made in 2 months at the hotel. They want you to play 3 15-minute sets, Diane read over his shoulder during their shared break. That's almost $2,000 per minute. Maybe I should have taken those piano lessons my mom wanted me to. It's crazy, Michael agreed, still stunned by the figure, but also kind of scary. These people will actually be listening, not just treating me like background music. You'll be amazing, Diane assured him, bumping his shoulder with hers. Just pretend you're playing for Victoria in that little Vietnamese restaurant. Michael smiled at the memory. Victoria had texted him twice since their meeting on the terrace. Brief messages asking how he was handling the attention and if he needed anything for the gala. He'd responded that he was fine, just working on his set list and trying to ignore the occasional photographer who had started lingering outside the hotel. The hotel management had been surprisingly supportive. The manager had even arranged for Michael to use the grand piano in the empty ballroom during off hours to practice. Consider it an investment, he'd said with a wink. When you're famous, you can tell people you got your start here. By Friday, Michael had polished his performance and even bought a new suit. Nothing extravagant, but nicer than anything he'd owned before. He'd used some of his advance payment from the gala, figuring it was a legitimate business expense. What he hadn't managed to do was sort out his feelings about Victoria. The kiss had been replaying in his mind all week along with their conversations. There was clearly a connection between them, but he couldn't shake the warnings from his colleagues and the doubts in his own mind. Was Victoria genuinely interested in him, or was he just a novelty, a brief escape from her high-pressure life? Saturday evening arrived, and Michael found himself in a taxi heading to the Westbrook Hotel, his stomach in knots. The venue was even more upscale than the Grand Palm, with a red carpet leading to the entrance and valets in crisp uniforms. Michael clutched his small bag containing sheet music and took a deep breath before stepping out of the taxi. "Name, sir?" asked a young woman with a tablet at the entrance. "Michael Chen, I'm performing tonight." Her eyes widened slightly in recognition. "Of course, Mr. Chen. Ms. Blackwood mentioned you specifically. Please follow me." She led him through the opulent lobby, past wealthy-looking guests in formal wear, and into a side hallway. "The performers' area is through here. The event coordinator will meet you and go over everything. You're scheduled to play at 8:30, 9:45, and 11 now. Thank you," Michael said, trying to appear more confident than he felt. The performers' area turned out to be a small but luxurious room with comfortable furniture, a table of refreshments and a practice keyboard in the corner. The event coordinator, a brisk woman named Heather, walked him through the schedule and showed him the ballroom where he would be performing. "It's a beautiful piano," she said, gesturing to the gleaming grand piano on the small stage at one end of the ballroom, just tuned yesterday. Workers were still setting up tables and decorating the space with flowers and twinkling lights. In a few hours, the room would be filled with the city's elite, all dressed in their finest and, presumably, ready to open their wallets for a good cause. "Will Ms. Blackwood be stopping by before the event?" Michael asked as casually as he could manage. Heather checked her watch. "She should be Thing about now for a final walkthrough. She likes to oversee all the details personally." As if on cue, the ballroom doors opened and Victoria walked in, surrounded by a small group of people with clipboards and worried expressions. She was dressed in a simple but elegant dress, her hair swept up, looking every bit the powerful CEO even while discussing flower arrangements and seating charts. She spotted Michael across the room, and her serious expression softened momentarily. Excusing herself from her group, she made her way over to where he stood with Heather. "Michael, you're early," she said, her tone warm but professional. "I hope everything is to your satisfaction." "It's perfect," he assured her. "The piano's beautiful. Only the best for our performers," Victoria said with a small smile. Then to Heather, "Could you give us a moment?" Once they were alone, Victoria's posture relaxed slightly. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," Michael admitted. "I've never played for an audience like this before." "They'll love you," Victoria said confidently. "But that's not what I meant. Are you nervous about seeing me again?" The directness of her question caught Michael off guard. Yes, a little," he confessed. "I've been thinking about you, about us all week." Victoria nodded as if she'd expected this answer. "I've been busy, but you've been on my mind too. This event has kept me distracted, but not completely." She glanced around to make sure they weren't being overheard, then continued in a lower voice. "There will be press here tonight, carefully selected and restricted to the public areas. Your name isn't in any of the materials, just listed as special musical guest. I wanted to protect your privacy." "I appreciate that," Michael said sincerely. "But," Victoria continued, "people will see us together. Questions will be asked. I need to know if you're okay with that." Michael hesitated. "What exactly are we, Victoria? 2 dates and a kiss don't define a relationship, especially with everything else that's happening." Victoria's expression turned thoughtful. "I'm not sure yet. All I know is that when I'm with you, I feel more like myself than I have in years. Is that enough for now?" Before Michael could respond, Heather approached again, apologetically informing Victoria that the catering manager needed to speak with her urgently. "Think about it," Victoria said softly. "We'll talk more after your first set." With a gentle squeeze of his hand, she was gone, back to her role as the commanding force behind the evening's event. Michael retreated to the performers' area to gather his thoughts and do some final practice. As he ran through scales to warm up, his mind kept returning to Victoria's words. "When I'm with you, I feel more like myself." It was strange how much that resonated with him. When he was with Victoria, the real Victoria, not the public persona, he felt more like himself too. More authentic, more alive. By the time 8:30 arrived, the ballroom had filled with guests in evening wear, the air buzzing with conversations and the clink of champagne glasses. Victoria had given a welcome speech, charming and passionate as she spoke about the importance of arts education in underserved communities. Now it was Michael's turn. As he took his place at the piano, Michael scanned the crowd, quickly finding Victoria near the front of the room. She gave him an encouraging nod, and somehow, that simple gesture calmed his racing heart. Michael began with a gentle, melodic piece that he had composed during his final year at Juilliard, the same one he had played for Victoria that first night. As his fingers moved across the keys, he felt the room gradually quieting, conversations tapering off as people turned to listen. He could feel it, the difference between playing background music and truly performing. These people were hearing him, actually hearing the music he had created. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. When he finished the piece, there was a moment of silence before applause broke out, genuine, appreciative applause. Michael moved into his second piece, something more complex and dynamic that he had composed just that week, inspired by the whirlwind his life had become. By the time his first set ended, Michael felt almost lightheaded with relief and satisfaction. As he made his way off the stage, several guests approached him with compliments and questions about his music. Victoria appeared at his side, smoothly integrating herself into the conversations. Michael studied at Juilliard, she told an older couple who seemed particularly impressed. He's been composing original work for years. We're very fortunate to have him tonight. The way she said it, with genuine pride and admiration, made something warm bloom in Michael's chest. This wasn't just Victoria showing off a new acquisition. She truly believed in his talent. As the evening progressed, Michael played his second set to an even more attentive audience. Between performances, he found himself drawn into Victoria's world, introduced to important people, included in conversations about the arts and education funding. To his surprise, he held his own, speaking passionately about music education and its impact on young people. "You're a natural at this," Victoria whispered during a quiet moment between introductions. These people adore you. They seem to respect you a great deal, Michael observed. Not just fear you like the stories suggest. Victoria's expression turned wry. The fear comes in handy in business negotiations. But for this work, the foundation, the music center, respect is more useful. During a brief lull in the evening, Victoria led Michael out onto a small balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool and refreshing after the warmth of the crowded ballroom. "You've been thinking about what I said earlier?" Victoria asked, leaning against the railing. "Yes," Michael said. "And I think I understand now. When we're together, all the labels fall away: pianist, CEO, employee, billionaire. We're just two people who connect through music and conversation." Victoria nodded slowly. "Exactly. Do you know how rare that is for someone in my position? To be seen as a person first, not a walking bank account or a powerful connection? About as rare as a hotel pianist being truly heard." Michael replied with a small smile. Victoria laughed, the sound genuine and unguarded. "So where does that leave us?" Michael took a deep breath. "I think it leaves us at the beginning of something. Something complicated and probably difficult, but potentially wonderful." Victoria's eyes softened. "I'm not good at relationships, Michael. My track record is not impressive." "Maybe you just haven't found the right duet partner," Michael suggested. Victoria groaned at the metaphor, but her smile remained. "That was terrible, but accurate," Michael insisted. He reached out, gently taking her hand. "I'm willing to try if you are." Victoria looked down at their joined hands, then back at his face. "I'm willing," she said softly. "But fair warning, my life is chaotic, public, and demanding. It won't be easy." "Good thing I don't like easy," Michael replied. "Easy is playing Moon River for the 100th time while hotel guests ignore me." Victoria laughed again, then glanced at her watch. "Your final set is in 20 minutes. Ready to wow them one more time?" As they walked back into the ballroom, Michael felt different, steadier, more certain. Whatever was beginning between him and Victoria might be complicated, but tonight had shown him it was possible to bridge their two worlds, at least sometimes. He also realized with sudden clarity that his music had never felt more alive, more meaningful. Perhaps that was the most unexpected gift of all, finding his voice just when someone important was finally listening. The morning after the gala, Michael woke to the sound of his phone buzzing repeatedly. Groggily, he reached for it, surprised to see dozens of notifications. Half awake, he opened the first message, a link to a music blog sent by his old college roommate with the message, "Dude, is this you?" The article headline read, "Unknown Pianist Steals the Show at Blackwood Foundation Gala." There was a photo of him at the piano, completely absorbed in his performance. The piece praised his emotional depth and technical brilliance, noting that he had received a standing ovation from some of the city's most discerning arts patrons. As Michael scrolled through more messages, he found similar links to other articles and social media posts. The charity gala had been covered by several local arts and society reporters, and somehow, his performance had become one of the main talking points. His phone rang, Victoria's name appearing on the screen. "Have you seen the coverage?" she asked when he answered, skipping any greeting. "Some of it," Michael said, still trying to process everything. "It's unexpected." "It's exactly what I expected," Victoria replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "You were extraordinary last night. Everyone is talking about you." "Everyone?" "Well, everyone who matters in the arts community," Victoria clarified. "The director of the Symphony Center was asking about you, and the dean of the music school at Westlake University." Michael sat up straighter, fully awake now. "Really, the Symphony Center?" "Really," Victoria confirmed. "This is just the beginning, Michael. Your talent deserves recognition." After they hung up, Michael lay back on his bed staring at the ceiling. His life had changed completely in just 1 week. From anonymous hotel pianist to featured performer being discussed in art circles. And then there was Victoria herself. No longer just the intimidating billionaire from the news, but a real person with depth and vulnerability who, against all odds, seemed to genuinely care about him. When he arrived at the hotel for his regular shift that evening, he was greeted with applause from his colleagues. The manager pulled him aside with a wide smile. "Chen, you made us proud last night." The hotel owner was at the gala. He couldn't stop talking about how our pianist was the hit of the evening. "Thank you," Michael said, embarrassed but pleased by the recognition. He'd like to discuss some new opportunities with you, the manager continued. Perhaps a feature night once a month where you perform your original compositions in the main ballroom. We could promote it properly, sell tickets. The offer was generous and unexpected. Just a week ago, it would have seemed like an incredible opportunity. Now Michael wasn't sure. I'd like some time to think about it, he said carefully. Of course, the manager agreed, clapping him on the shoulder. The music world might be beating a path to your door after last night. We just want you to know we value you here too. As Michael took his place at the lobby piano, he felt different. His posture was more confident, his approach to the instrument more deliberate. For the first time, hotel guests were actually watching him, some even recognizing him from the gala or the articles. He was midway through his set when a familiar figure appeared in the lobby. Not Victoria this time, but her assistant, Thomas. The man approached the piano with his usual efficient manner. "Mr. Chen," he said formally, "Ms. Blackwood would like to meet with you after your shift." "The car will be waiting. Is everything okay?" Michael asked, continuing to play softly. Thomas's expression remained professionally neutral. "She didn't share details. She just asked me to ensure you'd come." The rest of Michael's shift seemed to drag on endlessly. His mind raced with possibilities. Had Victoria changed her mind about their relationship? Was this related to his sudden minor fame? By the time he finished and headed to the staff exit, his nerves were stretched thin. True to Thomas's word, Victoria's car was waiting. This time, however, Victoria herself was inside, scrolling through her phone with a focused expression that softened when she saw him. "Sorry for the mysterious summons," she said, as he slid into the seat beside her. "I had a rather intense day and wanted to see you." "Everything okay?" Michael asked, studying her face. Despite her composed appearance, he could see signs of strain around her eyes. Victoria sighed, setting her phone aside. "The board called an emergency meeting this afternoon. Apparently, some of them have concerns about my recent personal life and its potential impact on the company image." "Me," Michael said. "It wasn't a question. You," Victoria confirmed. "Or more specifically, us. The photos from the gala are everywhere, not just in arts publications but in business news and gossip sites too. Tech CEO's romance with unknown musician makes for good clickbait, apparently." Michael's heart sank. "I'm causing problems for you." "No," Victoria said firmly. "Small-minded people with outdated ideas about how a CEO should behave are causing problems. I've weathered worse." She took his hand, her grip warm and reassuring. "But I wanted to be transparent with you about what we're facing. The board can't dictate my personal life, but they can make things difficult professionally, and the media attention on you is only going to increase if we continue seeing each other." "Are you having second thoughts?" Michael asked quietly. Victoria's expression softened. "Actually, quite the opposite. The board meeting clarified things for me. I sat there listening to these men, mostly older men who've known me since I started the company, lecture me about appropriate relationships and maintaining a professional image. And I realized something. What? I've spent years living my life to meet others' expectations. The boards, the shareholders, the public's. The only time I felt truly free to be myself was at the Community Music Center. And with you." Victoria shifted in her seat to face him more directly. "So no, Michael, I'm not having second thoughts. But I want you to understand what you're getting into. Being with me comes with scrutiny, judgment, and complications." Michael considered her words carefully. The past week had given him a taste of life in the spotlight. The gossip articles, the photographers, the sudden interest in his every move. It was disorienting and sometimes uncomfortable, but it had also brought opportunities he could never have imagined. Performing for an appreciative audience, connections with important figures in the music world, the chance to share his compositions beyond the hotel lobby, and most importantly, it had brought him Victoria. Not the public figure, but the woman who volunteered to teach piano to underprivileged children, who knew the best hole-in-the-wall Vietnamese restaurant in the city, and who kissed him with surprising tenderness on the hotel terrace. "I think," Michael said slowly, "that anything worth having usually comes with complications. The question is whether what you gain is worth what you have to endure." Victoria watched him intently, waiting. "For me," he continued, "getting to create music that people actually hear and appreciate is worth dealing with some gossip and photographers. And getting to know you, the real you, is worth all the rest. Victoria's face broke into a genuine smile. Not the polished one she used for business, but the warm one he'd come to recognize as belonging only to her private self. I was hoping you'd say that, she admitted, because I have a proposition for you. Another one? Michael asked with a small laugh. The last one turned out pretty well. I think this one might be even better, Victoria said. She took a deep breath. The Symphony Center is looking for a composer in residence for their next season. After your performance last night, the director asked if you might be interested. Michael stared at her, speechless. It would mean leaving the hotel, Victoria continued. The position comes with a stipend, and you'd write original compositions for the symphony to perform. Your work would reach a much wider audience. That's incredible, Michael managed finally. But I don't understand. Why would the director offer a position like that to someone he just heard once? Victoria looked slightly uncomfortable. I might have shared some of your other compositions with him last week. I recorded you playing at the music center when you weren't looking. You what? I know I should have asked, Victoria said quickly. But you were playing something so beautiful while waiting for me to finish with Lily's lesson, and I wanted to capture it. When the opportunity came up to mention you to the director, I already had proof of your talent. Michael shook his head, torn between disbelief and gratitude. You've been planning this? Not exactly planning, Victoria clarified. More like creating possibilities. The talent is all yours, Michael. I just helped to get it in front of the right people. The car had been driving through the city as they talked, and Michael suddenly realized they were pulling up to the community music center. Why are we here? He asked. Victoria checked her watch. It's where I go when I need perspective. And there's someone I think you should meet, the center's director. She's retiring next year, and they're looking for someone who understands both music education and composition to take over. Do you think I should apply for that too? Eventually, perhaps, Victoria said. For now, I just want you to see what's possible. A life with music at its center, teaching, composing, performing. The life you trained for. As they entered the building, Michael felt a strange sense of coming home, though he'd only been here once before. The worn but welcoming space hummed with purpose. Children practicing in various rooms. The sound of different instruments creating a chaotic but joyful symphony. The center's director greeted Victoria with a warm hug and shook Michael's hand enthusiastically. Victoria's told me so much about you, she said. Your performance at the gala was the talk of our board meeting this morning. As they toured the facility, discussing programs and future plans, Michael noticed how animated Victoria became, gesturing excitedly as she described her vision for expanding the center's reach. This is where you belong, Michael said quietly to her during a private moment. Not just writing checks, but being involved like this. You light up when you talk about it. Victoria looked surprised, then thoughtful. Maybe we both belong in places we didn't expect, she said. You at the Symphony Center rather than the hotel lobby. Me spending more time here and less in boardrooms? A new arrangement, Michael suggested, smiling at his own musical reference. Exactly, Victoria agreed. One where we both get to play the music that matters most to us. Later, as they sat side by side at an old upright piano in an empty classroom, their shoulders touching as Michael played a simple duet he was teaching her, he realized how far they'd both come from that first night in the hotel lobby. Victoria Blackwood, the intimidating CEO, was laughing as she missed a note. Michael Chen, the background pianist, was patiently guiding her hands back to the right keys. Two people from different worlds finding harmony in an unexpected place. Play that again, Victoria said, her eyes bright with determination. I think I'm getting it. As their hands moved across the keys together, creating something new and imperfect and beautiful, Michael knew this was just the beginning of their story.